Welcome to the Malta Chamber podcast. The Malta Chamber, together with BOV, joined forces together for the second episode from a 6-part series dedicated to help businesses recognize, understand, and defend each other and themselves from the ever-evolving world of scams and fraud. For the benefit of those who have joined us for this particular podcast, we are going to delve deep into how common this situation is of fraud and scam. How can you recognize fake invoices, scammed emails, WhatsApps, cyber attacks, and business personification, and more. Each week, we're going to witness real stories, experts' views on the situation, and tips of how you can avoid this situation. Whether you are a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting, this series will definitely help listeners with the right tools to have the right tools to spot the red flags and also avoid costly mistakes and outsmart those who try to seek to rob you or your business itself. So join us as we expose the tricks of the trade and help understand and build a better and safer business community for everyone. So last week, for those of you who have just joined us, last week we heard stories of businesses and individuals that got scammed in Malta. It is very, very important to say that we are only going to speak about the Maltese business community, which means those who have business in Malta and how these real-life stories affected them when they got scammed. Today, we will be focusing on the business email compromise, in short we call it BEC, and investment compromise. And to discuss this further, I have with me BOV Deputy Money Laundering Reporting Officer Mark Falzon. Thank you, Mark, for being with us today and for accepting this invitation. Mark, you work constantly with local Maltese businesses. How big is the problem?
It is big. We're talking about millions of euros being lost, and with businesses, sometimes the transactions are large in nature. Obviously, it depends on the type of business, what you're involved in. But the transactions will be quite larger than what would an individual in his own right be subjected to, I would have to say.
Okay, let me be the devil's advocate here. You might tell me the situation is big, but I want you to give me a concrete story of a business that recently, so this is not last year, but a couple of weeks ago, got scammed and he did not spot the red flags.
Okay, let's start with the number to give you an idea of what we're talking about. One transaction for 120,000 in a split second, gone.
How did he do it? And tell me the story.
Yes, basically, obviously, from what we managed to understand from the client perspective, they received an email from a business counterpart that they do business with. It wasn't even the first time that they were doing business with this counterparty. I believe it had been years where they were transacting between them. It was his supplier, one of his suppliers, and he received an email from this supplier. Obviously, it was a spoofed email in this case, where the supplier was asking him to remit the money to a different IBAN number than he used to do normally in previous occasions. The customer went ahead, saw the email, sent out the money to the new IBAN provided, and the money was gone within a matter of minutes. He didn't realize immediately what had happened. In fact, more than a week had passed by the time he realized, because ultimately the supplier phoned back asking, can you please settle the invoice that we have so we can dispatch the goods. He told them, I sent the money, I sent it more than a week ago, And that's when he realized then that, because obviously after discussing with the supplier, he told him that you sent me an email telling me to pay on a different IBAN. The supplier said, no, we did not send any email of that sort. And that's when he realized. By that time, after a week, the money had long gone, and any efforts to retrieve it makes it much more complicated for us to be able to then assist our customers accordingly.
Okay, let's stick to this story. The business, you yourself said that the business, that this particular business, local business, a Maltese entrepreneur, used to do a number of transactions with this company.
Yes, correct.
How would he know that that was fraudulent? How would he know if he's doing business constantly with this guy?
Correct. There were a number of, look, with hindsight, there were a number of red flags that the customer should have been careful. First of all, when you receive, and now this is in general for any business, when you receive an email out of the blue asking you to change, the payment, the IBAN where the payment is going,
Question it.
question it. Especially, for example, in this case, now normally this business-to-business relationship was between a Maltese customer and his supplier, who I believe was situated in Italy. So the new IBAN that was provided was a Spanish IBAN for a bank in Spain. So there was already the first red flag, like why would an Italian company that I've been, transacting with for all this time in Italy to an Italian IBAN is now providing me a Spanish IBAN.
So, okay, stop there. The Spanish, how did he know it as Spanish?
It's because the first two letters in every IBAN that is issued worldwide.
Okay, so that's why he...
So, for example, just to give you an example, every Maltese IBAN issued by a Maltese financial institution would start with MT.
Okay, so that's one that you need to look for.
The second one, had I been the customer, in fact, that's what we sort of, after discussions we had with them, always question. And do not question by email, question by different means. So in case like this, where the email he received was spoofed, you do not fall to to a second wave of attack, because the minute you reply to a spoofed email, you're going to be replying to the fraudster and not to the the actual supplier in this case. What a simple call to a supplier, especially that you've been transacting with for a number of years, could have possibly avoided this unfortunate event from happening to this customer.
So what you're saying is businesses to remain to not fall in this trap, basically, they should constantly question certain transactions.
I wouldn't say only transactions, I would also question certain emails. If the email is coming out of nowhere, asking you to change an IBAN, it's not a normal business-to-business email. You're telling me, but it's not the first time that a real supplier would change an IBAN. Yes, but it doesn't happen so often. So a simple phone call would go a long way to ensure that the instructions being given are indeed correct.
Okay, and story like this, which happened recently in Malta, in the local context, how often does it happen to the local businesses?
Unfortunately, more often than people realize. It's one of the main things that businesses are subjected to, because in terms of fraud, there are a lot of different frauds taking place. We'll get to that throughout the different podcasts we're discussing. But businesses are mostly subjected to this form of fraud that we call business email compromise. As I explained before, unfortunately, the transactions are normally quite large in nature. Why? Because the fraudsters would normally imitate a business counterparty where, as most businesses would know, payments relating to invoices would normally be of a larger nature. Now, there are businesses where their normal invoicing would be, a few thousand, 10, 20,000, and there are other businesses where their transaction, due to the nature of the work they're involved with, would be in the higher thousands, if not millions. I haven't come across payment in the millions yet, but we've seen we've seen cases where after a number of payments, the total would be quite substantial. So,
Can you give me another story of a local business? What are the red flags? And when it comes to the business, because we're talking about BEC, the business.
yes, other stories, very similar stories. We've had self-employed. So before the company I was telling you before is quite a large company that employs a lot of people. But we had cases where self-employed were indeed subjected.
So this is important, what you're saying. So with the size of the company
Does not matter.
does not matter. You can be a sole trader, you can be a consultant, you can be a self-employed, but you can be an organization very big with robust
Correct.
systems.
Correct. And unfortunately, I would say that this is a personal opinion but from what I see, the bigger the company, potentially the more subject you are of falling for it. Why? Because such emails would normally be received at your finance department. So potentially, your 20-year-old clerk would be handling your accounts clerk would be handling that particular transaction or dealing with the counterparty when it comes to financials. So unless they would know what to look for, it's easier for them to fall for such type of scams. While if you're a self-employed individual, being your business and you're handling most things yourself, you might be a bit more careful and subject yourself to more checks
and balances.
Checks and balances. So the bigger it doesn't matter how big you are. It doesn't matter how sophisticated your IT equipment is. All it takes is a split second of not being careful and not looking the other way, but literally not being careful for a second. And nowadays, even with the instant payment regulations that's coming up in the next few weeks, it will be a payment like that can go in seconds.
Okay. What other examples do you receive as a bank from local businesses?
As I said, mostly the business community is subjected to the business email compromise fraud. Having said that, I've had cases where businesses lost quite a substantial amount of money due to other types of fraud, such as card fraud or even investment fraud, where especially in this case, more of a smaller nature. I recall a case where one of our customers was self-employed, fell for an investment scam, and by mistake he used the funds of the company of his business to purchase to carry out the investment. So despite it initially being a personal nature, starting from a personal nature, however, it was the money of his business venture.
How much did he lose?
We're talking around 50 to 60,000 in this particular case.
Okay. I've noticed as well that you said that sometimes with a click of a button, business community in Malta lost hundreds of thousands of euros in scams. I would say that from even the research I did is that the word urgency here doesn't feature. It should not feature in your dictionary as a business community. So cautious and urgency do not stay together, and we're saying leave the word urgency
Correct.
away so that you can quickly verify your things. However, this is important to mention that it is not only in Malta that happens, these scams, that these companies, huge companies, get scammed. I don't know if you can relate this to for example, to the story of the Hong Kong CEO.
Yes, correct. That is a very good case example that you mentioned, where in Hong Kong, this happened last year. Even with the rise in AI technology nowadays, there is this particular case in Hong Kong where a multinational company that had offices around the world, one of the people in the finance department was contacted via email, believing he was talking to his CFO, the CEO. He was talking to the CEO, he was asking for a meeting, together with a number of other people within the finance team. He went on this meeting, on a Zoom or Microsoft Teams meeting, and he was saying it. He was believing he was actually in a normal Microsoft Teams meeting where the CFO was urging him to transfer 25 million, the equivalent of 25 million euros. It was in Hong Kong dollars, obviously, being in Hong Kong, to an account, to a particular account. And he was saying this with a matter of urgency because of some settlements that the company, he believed that the company needed to make.
So the CFO was talking to
A finance clerk.
And when you say talking, you can see him?
You could see him. In fact, it was all deepfake. Hong Kong police actually, after the investigations, that they realized there were about 12 people in this call, and the only genuine person, real person, that was on the call was this finance individual who eventually affected the payment of 25 million
The victim,
equivalent.
basically.
Well, the victim was the company ultimately.
Yeah.
He was just the person executing the transaction. Exactly like I said before, the bigger you are, the more people you have involved in these things. And in this case, he was just an employee. It's ultimately his company that lost the money, and the money was sent to wherever the instructions he was given, and they only realized, a few days later, of what had actually happened when the real CFO questioned this particular transaction. And from there, the investigation started, and they realized that through the use of deepfake technology, this guy was duped into sending such a large amount outside. So no, it's not only in Malta, it happens everywhere. From a Maltese perspective, I think it's good to say that we haven't seen, it's good, it means, because of obviously the controls that banks have in Malta. We haven't seen funds coming in, so a Maltese person or Maltese entity being the perpetrator of such, also the scammer themselves. They were all, our customers have always been the victims. But yes, it can happen very easily.
Just for the sake of those who are following, how the amount of money lost in this Hong Kong company?
25 million euros, the equivalent of 25 million euros. One transaction.
One transaction.
One transaction.
Okay, one might tell you, but I mean, the CFO is a bit nuts to send that amount of money. Shouldn't he have questioned? What would be your answer to that?
First of all, I reiterate that he was not talking to the real CFO, he was talking to an image.
Yes, but if your CEO is telling you that, I mean, your CEO, your superior, what do you do? So how would you do it if it was him, with hindsight?
With hindsight, I could definitely in writing. I do not know obviously what controls the company itself had. I cannot speak.
Yes, but for the benefit of the local.
Multi authorization for payments, so there are more people involved that might, raise reflect. So, say in this case, it was just one individual who affected the payment. Had there been a multi-layer authorization in place for that payment to be processed, then one of the other people involved might, have raised a red flag and what is this, get it in writing, and so on and so forth, calls the CFO via other means. So these are all simple controls, but sometimes I get the feeling that customers see them as a burden, like in Maltese we say hamuru. When in fact that's the worst thing you can possibly do. The more controls you implement, the more checks and balances you have in such instances.
Just to close the subject of business email compromise. So we mentioned you need to check the IBAN number. You need to check the email
address. Yes.
Check email address. Are there any other red flags that you can check so that you won't fall in the trap?
Urgency. You mentioned urgency before. From not all the cases obviously, but from my experience, when there are these kind of emails, there is in the email tone, the way it is written, it's done with a sense of urgency. Why? Because obviously the fraudster wants to ensure you affect it as fast as possible before you start realizing that something might be wrong. And that is one important thing to note when you receive certain email. Is there a sense of urgency in how the email has been drafted? Like effective as soon as possible, by end of day, urgent in the subject field. If your supplier is really changing his IBAN, I don't think it's such an urgent matter. He's just informing you that he doesn't need anything. So all these signs, the email itself being marked as urgent, as high priority, all these signs together with a random email received, the email address which would be spoofed, but very similar to the real email that you would normally receive from. These are all the red flags, the major red flags that businesses can note for business email compromise frauds.
Mark, when we were preparing for this podcast, you had also mentioned that there is no harm in also calling the person himself, the other trader himself. So listen, did you change, I'm just double checking, did you change your IBAN number?
Yes, correct. And it's very important that such calls are done via different means. So if you know, before I said, don't reply to that email if you're clarifying, call. But call on a number, on an office number. Where you normally call
each other,
to ensure that you're verifying that information. Ultimately, if it's a genuine thing, he will just tell you, yes, I did send it because we had to change banks, we change the IBAN number, so on and so forth. But that simple phone call could save you thousands of money, probably in loss.
Another sector that you also look after here at BOV is the investment fraud. And obviously banks have their own investment schemes and bonds and shares, etc., etc. It's very important to say that last year investment fraud amounted to 1.4 million in Malta. And we have to say as well that we've already reached this level, and we are not at the end of year this year in Malta. And I repeat this and I stress that it is happening locally. First of all, what are your stories locally?
Good. First of all, it's good to make a bit of a distinction just for our followers. Investment fraud is mostly targeted at personal individuals. However, as the example I gave you a little bit earlier.
But an individual is a business person as well.
Businesses that can be affected, but yes,
absolutely.
Business people are indeed personal. Now, you mentioned last year there was 1.4 million at a national level. And this year we've already reached that target, and we're still quite a few months away from end of year. It's good to point out that those are the ones we know of. There are a lot of people who are still falling for them or have been falling for such scams and have not yet realized. It's gained a lot of traction, especially, I would say, since October, November of last year. There was a huge spike from that time towards, mid-March, April, and we've seen another spike, us personally here at BOV, in the summer. And normally the most common way how these investment frauds are being perpetrated are through fake videos on social media. That's the most common. There are other ways, and I will explain, I'll give some context as well. But that's the most common way, where you see videos of normally famous people promoting these investments that will give you, a stratospheric return in a very short amount of time. We've seen people locally, like important people of certain importance, last year towards the budget of last year. There was videos of the Minister of Finance, Mr. Caruana, who had a number of videos promising these returns,
So basically you see the minister encouraging you.
Yes, and it was done within a context. So there was the budget, which is normally you see the Minister of Finance.
A couple of days we'll have
and then
it.
in a couple of days we will be having it. So I am expecting another run of Clyde Caruana videos popping up here and there on social media, and they will entice you to say invest. Last year, the video of last year, they were telling you invest €300, €300 once or twice, if I'm not mistaken, and you will start getting returns of €3,000 every month together with your pension.
And people fall for
And
it.
people fall for it. A lot of people fall for it. And in fact, I can recount a particular case where this individual, after we spoke to him, he even showed us messages on, I think it was Signal, which is similar to WhatsApp, an app similar to WhatsApp, where someone created, obviously, not the case, but someone was writing to him as if it was Clyde Caruana. And this poor individual was seriously believing that he was talking to the Minister of Finance. And the fake Clyde Caruana was asking him for more money. Listen, this is going to triple, quadruple your return. And the gentleman kept sending money.
Mark, it is important to mention that people who get scammed, fraud, in these type of situations do not necessarily come from low education background or people that are vulnerable, but even people with very high education level, tertiary education level, seasoned entrepreneurs, and people who have a very good knowledge of banking and investments and technology.
People are manipulated.
Because I want to make and stress this out, even for the business community. If any one of you is questioning whether these stories are real or these stories might affect only a segment of society because they are gullible to certain situations, it's not the case from
definitely
from
not
what
the case.
you a witness. And
look, I've seen individuals who are just coming out of university with degrees and masters for it. I've seen people of a certain profile. I've seen also elder people who might be more vulnerable, all spectrum of society.
Yes. So I know I stopped you, but I really wanted to make this thing important. So you were saying that we have situations where high-profile people like the Ministry for Finance encourage you to invest. And obviously you wouldn't know, and you have people who got scammed.
Yes.
If you had to give a roundabout figure of, for example, this person, how much this person lost?
This particular case, if I'm not mistaken, we're talking around in excess of €30,000. But I've had people who fell for a lot more than that. I've seen people touching 150 to 100,000. It's good to say this happens over a span of time. Normally investment fraud, it's not like business email compromise, one transaction and it happens. And normally investment fraud, they start with something with little, €300, €150. Normally they send you a little bit of a return because this is an interesting part to entice you even more. So you say, you send the first transaction to €150, €300, and say in 2 or 3 days, you receive a return of €30. And you're like, wow, I made €30 in 3 days. So they tell you, invest a bit more. So the returns will be greater. And you start
Engaging.
They create fake websites with a trading platform, which they give you access, but and you believe that your investments are going through the roof. Then they tell you, listen, it's the investment is, if you add X amount, the investment will go through the roof, and we're expecting, I don't know, say 10,000 in one go coming back. So you send them a bit more, basically until you have nothing else to give. So they literally exploit you till you either realize or literally till you have nothing else. It's also good to point out that they come in batches. Why? Because once they realize you're noticing something is not right, because obviously there is no investment ever coming back, you get contacted by, not in all cases, but I've seen it in quite a number of cases, you get contacted by a pretended lawyer saying that, listen, I believe you've been falling victim for a scam. I can help you get your money back by involving Interpol. Now, Interpol doesn't.
Wait, Mark, because you're giving a lot of information and I don't want to get lost this information. So you're saying someone would tell you to invest in a fraud, in an investment. You wouldn't know, obviously, that it is fraud. You start investing, you see some return in investment, you continue to invest. The local business will continue to give money up until a point where he would realize, listen, when it's too late, that a lot of money has been
Correct.
lost. Then the scammer hasn't stopped there yet.
No.
He continues by faking a lawyer or Interpol or Europol.
We've seen
Yeah.
in all of them, yes.
And
then they ask you for a fee. For example, I've seen, funny, as an after,
we answered at the
I
same
said at the same time. I've seen a letter purporting to be from Interpol saying that we've accepted your case. We'll be opening up this major investigation, but in order to open it, you need to pay 13,000 euro fees, and they give you a breakdown of how this fee they came up to this fee.
And the business person.
And the business person or the
again?
individual sends the 13,000, and you never hear from them again, because obviously it's the same scammer, just using a different tactic.
And I have to say that this is in Malta. I need to say
Happening in Malta, yes.
This
Yes,
is
it's
happening
in Malta to
and
Maltese
it's
individuals.
exactly. So now one would ask, but scam is happening only like the scammer, the fraudster is abroad, is abroad, or do we have locals as well?
Look, it's also good to say while we're here. The fraudsters are normally away abroad, so you're talking to them online.
Okay.
But over recent months, we have also seen this sort of a Maltese connection. There's been going rounds. It was even on social media where, just to give an example, people were getting calls purporting to be an employee of BOV, informing you that of our own bank, informing you that your accounts have been blocked because of this and that, and the fraud starts from there. But we have also had, I can recall a few cases, 2 or 3 that come to mind right now, where the initial contact to start the investment, which the investment will then happen online, 3 individuals, separate individuals, so it wasn't a connected fraud, where they claim to have been approached in Malta, 2 of them in a casino, and the 3rd one in a tombola.
Okay, tell me the story. This is interesting.
Yes, basically in this case, an individual approached these customers, again, separate customers, and I do not know if it's the same individual or not. Obviously, I don't have a description. Where, for example, in the tombola case, this lady was with her friends playing tombola, and one of these, the bingo halls, they organize especially for the older generation. And this individual started talking to this lady, telling her, listen, how are you doing with pension? It's almost impossible, creating this narrative where it's true. I mean, there are a lot of people, who with pension, maybe it's not enough. And he created this narrative where he told her, listen, you can do better. There are ways if you do this investment. For me, it worked so well. I'm receiving so much money per month from this investment. And eventually this lady started, followed the instructions she was given, and ended up falling victim. This case, if I recall correctly, she lost around 16,000, which was most of what she had, accumulated in her life.
Why should, one might ask out there, but why is the bank checking this out? I mean, you're not the police. She should have gone to the police. What would be the answer?
First of all, when customers come to us, we always, after normally the fraud would have happened, we always ask them to report the matter to the police.
Okay.
unfortunately, there is this misconception the police do nothing. It's not the case. I can vouch because I work very closely the great work that is being done, and the importance of the police being aware of the situation, because obviously they have bigger visibility than any bank in Malta, so they can actually link cases even from their end. I know there will be the police in other podcasts, so they can give more information from their end. However, as a bank, first of all, we always try to assist the customer. It's not always easy to get money back. I have to be very honest. But there were cases where we managed to get quite a number of money. Ultimately, it's I would call it CSR, corporate social responsibility. So when you have a customer who fell victim, the least you can do is try and assist and get whatever you can back.
When it comes to the investment fraud, you had mentioned very pertinently that a lot of some of these scams would be using high-profile people, local high-profile people, to encourage you to create like almost this appetite to continue to invest, etc. What other personalities did you have that they were used to entice them?
Yes, I've seen also Maltese people falling victim to such cases where the person in the video was not Maltese. There was at the time Elon Musk. There was quite a popular video of Elon Musk, and there were quite a number of Maltese who fell victim to the Elon Musk investment. And so it's not only...
Including the business community?
I have to be honest, yes, I believe yes, but the Elon Musk one has been a couple of years ago now. More recently, they have refined, and now they're using Maltese personalities and tying the timing of the video to local affairs. So what's happening in Malta? So for example, in May last year, I've seen a couple of videos where at around the time of the Eurovision, where there was Miriana Ponte, advertising these investments to get rich fast. What is
the Prime Minister?
The Prime Minister. There were a number.
I know the Prime Minister and Bernard Grech were
used for
our
CEO at one point. I think a few years ago, there was a video of our CEO promoting a fake investment. It wasn't him, mind you. It was obviously a deepfake of our CEO. So, but yes, not everyone knows who the CEO Bank of Valletta is.
Yes.
So that gives
almost credibility.
A credibility to the scheme, and that's why they use them. In fact, as we said before, we're approaching the budget, so I'm expecting that in the next couple of weeks we start seeing again videos of the Ministry of Finance
encouraging
to investments. We've had recently the new leader of the opposition, so again, I wouldn't be surprised to see videos with the new leader of the opposition advertising such investments. And unfortunately, people will become gullible if they're not careful. There will be a lot of people who would fall for something like that. But I would stress the main red flag, and for everyone to be careful of, is that the returns being advertised are normally never realistic.
So that is the rest.
That is the red flag for the fraud. And let's face it, none of these individuals will entice you, especially on the political spectrum, wouldn't entice you for their job. So if you're ever in doubt, ask a real financial advisor of your trust before starting such investments.
And in fact, you took me to my last question to you about this investment fraud. And we obviously now have a situation where it's not only the business companies, like for example, established local business companies that issue bonds and investment funds, etc. But there is also now the issue of crypto, Bitcoin. What can you tell me there? What are the red flags that the business community now have to look after?
Look, first of all, let's put away the misconception that crypto is bad. It's another form of currency like normal fiat currencies. But we've seen that a lot of the funds lost through investment fraud I would say around 60%, people are asked to send money to a crypto wallet. So one must be a bit careful before, unless you have your own wallet and you're topping up your own wallet, if you've not confident, you've never done such transactions before, especially when you're topping up certain wallets, I would urge caution. If you're not sure, speak to someone you trust, someone who can guide you. If we're talking about investment fraud, I would suggest any financial advisor licensed by the Maltese authorities, and to get an advice.
So if I had to wrap up this podcast, I would say the word urgency needs to be completely out of your dictionary, and double check constantly and take advice from professional people.
Definitely.
Mark Falzon, BOV Deputy Money Laundering Reporting Officer, thank you very much for participating in this podcast. For the listeners, for the benefit of the listeners wishing to contact BOV in relation to these stories that we've heard, or question or query something which is suspicious, I urge you to call the number 21312020. I repeat, 21312020. All communication will be handled with respect for privacy. May I remind you also that you can listen to the first podcast that we did about scams, phones and calls and WhatsApp messages by clicking on episode 1 of the series of podcasts with BOV. Thank you for staying with us, and don't forget to tune in.